Yeah, you have to wait.
Bill, what do you want me to say to that? Always do.
I'll work on that.
Okay, I'd like to call this meeting of your Newark City Council to order, March 6, 2023. Janine, please call the roll.
Mr. Hauser.
Here.
Mr. Labutus.
Here.
Mr. Lang.
Present.
Mr. Marmy.
Present.
Mr. Rath.
Here.
Mr. Ron. Mr. Barker.
Here.
Ms. Wines.
Here.
Mr. Harris.
Here.
Ms. Hollinger.
Here.
We have 9 here present this evening. If you please stand for the invocation by Mrs. Klein and remain standing.
Lord, we thank you for this great gathering here tonight, Father. We thank you, God, for the freedom that we have in this great nation, Father. Help us from the base, from the most base office, God, to the highest office in the land, to align ourselves with your purposes and your plan. Lord, give us discernment and wisdom. Lord, we request that you would come and officiate in this setting tonight, Lord. We thank you for your goodness and kindness. Lord, help us to be obedient in all your ways. Thank you, Lord, for our service, our EMS, our service departments and our EMS departments. Thank you for protecting them, Father. Thank you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. It's my pleasure tonight to introduce Luke Wansel. He's here with his dad, Drew. And he's going to start us in the pledge. Whenever you're ready, Luke.
I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That was perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't feel like you have to stay. I don't think anybody's over the pledge. Thank you. Thanks, Luke. Next, we have caucus. That's the time for council to discuss anything pertaining to the agenda tonight. Do we have anything, Mr. Long?
Thank you, Mr. President. Make a motion to excuse Mr. Ryan.
Motion by Mr. Marmy, second by Mr. Hauser. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Post same sign. That passes. Thank you. Do we have anything else for caucus this evening? Okay. Next, we have the minutes of our February 21st, 2023 meeting. Do we have a motion to approve those? Motion by Mr. Labuda, second by Mr. Harris. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Post same sign. That passes. There are no appointments this evening. There are 2 reports from standing committees, one from finance, one from service. Without objection, those will be received and filed. Reports from city officials. We have one this evening. Licking County Municipal Court Judge Matt George has the 2022 Licking County Municipal Court Annual Report. That will be received and filed. Under communications tonight, we have 2, both from the Ohio Division of Liquor Control. One for a new liquor license for Slingin' Pizza on West Church Street. And the other new application for Buckeye Avenue Buckeye Axe Throwing LLC. Buckeye Avenue. Seems like there's a problem with liquor and axe throwing. Without objection, both 3 received and filed. Wow. Tonight we have a couple public hearings. The first one tonight, first public hearing tonight is 2055. Janine, please read the public hearing if you would, please.
Ordinance number 2255 by Mr. Rath, Mr. Barker, Ms. Blind, Mr. Marmy, and Mr. Harris. An ordinance changing the zoning classification of certain real property generally described as 293 Merchant Street, parcel 054-250-128-00.000, City of Newark, Licking County, Ohio, from that of single-family residence RM medium density district to TFR 2-family residence district, zoning code of the City of Newark, Ohio.
The planning commission has recommended not to approve this, so to approve this, we'll need 7 votes. We're going to open this public hearing. This is your chance for either pro or con to speak on this public hearing. If you'd like to speak, please raise your hand and I'll bring you up. We're going to start with Director David Rhodes.
Thank you, Mr. President. The proposed zoning change on Merchant Street just does not fit. It is a single family residential neighborhood that needs to remain a historic neighborhood. The people that live there were our merchants in past years. And the people that live there now take a lot of pride in their homes, and adding the element of additional multifamily housing just simply wouldn't fit. So we urge you to support the planning commission's decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rhodes. Anyone else like to speak, please raise your hand and I'll try to call you up in order.
Bill Cost, 1639 Krebs Court. I'm here tonight to express my total opposition to legislation, the ordinance 2255. What you have is a single family residential neighborhood that has significant historic architecture. It's just no place to turn into anything other than that, to make multifamily or to run a business out of, or to think that you would add traffic to an area like that. I think it simply is not the place to have it. We used to refer to that as spot zoning. And that's something that in the history that I've been involved with, Newark has tried very hard not to do spot zoning. And I think it would be a huge mistake. I would like to think that it's not going to be given virtually any consideration by this council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Anyone else like to speak, please raise your hand so I can call you up, either Con, Pro, or Con. Sir, and then ma'am, you're next, and then sir, you in the back. I got you. If you just give us your name and address for the record.
My name is Jay Andrews. I live at 296 Merchant, right across the street from the proposed senior center they're talking about. Been there 37 years. I got other neighbors that have been there 38 years. It's always been a great neighborhood, children to grow up in and so forth. Everybody is very friendly with each other in the neighborhood, so we're all close knit. I don't know if you're aware of it or not, but we have a petition that was signed. We had like almost 30 names, 30 different residences in the area turning this down, not wanting to change. So I hope that you take that into consideration when you make your decisions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ma'am, you want to go next, and then sir, you'll be next.
Beverly King, 285 Merchant Street, I'm Con. I would be right beside this house. I live right beside it. There's an alley between us. And I don't relish the traffic that would be there, the noise for constructing a parking lot in the back that they're talking about, or any additions to that house. And I would like to present the petition that everyone signed. And thank you.
Thank you. Sir.
I'm Robert Vale. I and my wife own 293 Merchant Street. So we are here in favor, pro. To give you a little background, on February 14th, a lot of the people here came to the planning commission meeting to kind of spell out the doom that would befall the neighborhood if a group of seniors is allowed to convalesce in a quiet home on Merchant Street. The collective message that was received by the opposition was that they're not welcome in the neighborhood where able-bodied doctors and lawyers and merchants have historically lived. Now, if we said this same thing about any other minority group, they're not welcome here. I think it would be very clear to us that that was wrong-minded and discriminatory. But when we say it about senior citizens, we think it's okay. Every one of us, unless we die early, are going to need help at some point in our lives. When we reach that point, should we be excluded from living in a nice neighborhood in Newark? That's like discriminating against our own future selves. by doing that. So this disability that's caused by age and years of service is as important and protected under the law as is color or race. So, I mean, if you decide to accept the planning commission's recommendation to uphold the wishes of the neighbors on Merchant Street that want to exclude this group of people, we will step away from it. We step back and the Department of Housing and Urban Development step in to enforce the Fair Housing Act. Those officials have told us that they send the Department of Justice to do the investigation and to take legal action in the city as needed. They said that unfortunately they do that routinely, even in Ohio. So that is kind of the next step for us. But what I'm really wondering is, as leaders and citizens of Newark, are we the type of city? Are we the type of people that are going to embrace discrimination rather than the progress that we've shown in developing our infrastructure and welcoming business and trying to serve our citizens? Are we really going to force the federal government to tell us or force us not to discriminate? Or can we make that decision on our own? Council, any questions for me as the sponsor of this change? Thanks.
Yeah.
Teresa Burgers, 299 Merchant Street. I'm the old resident with my husband on the street. And this is totally out of character with what the neighborhood is, has been, always should be. And Mr. Bell's interests may be well-intended, but this is a place for it. So I hope you hear us. This is not what we desire, not what we ever moved in to expect. And it's not about discrimination. It's about maintaining the character of the neighborhood that we expected and have upheld. And we hope that wisdom reigns.
Thank you. Sir.
Good evening. My name is Scott Reeves. I live at 388 Merchant Street. And I want to start by apologizing that I failed first grade math and only have 10 copies. If you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit of pretty pictures and some numbers. I want to thank you all for your service. This isn't an easy job and you definitely are compensated enough for what you do. With my job, I'm typically in front of various councils, city ordinance planners, architectural review boards, and even city councils. And I can tell you that it's very hard for you to do it. I want to apologize for my language. I'm Southern, so I'll do my best not to use words like near, reckon. But in case you need a translation, I brought my 14-year-old son, and he'll be happy to help you a little bit. Typically in my job, I'm on the other side of this conversation because I'm usually seeking a variance. I'm asking for the allowance to put up a fence or to take down a sign or repave the sidewalk. And this allows me the chance to get in front of lovely people like you, but it also allows me to hear from the citizens and the communities that I'm putting buildings in. I can tell you that usually these conversations are very few and far between because there's not a lot of citizens that show up to these kind of meetings, and any grievances they might have are minor. So it allows me to hear them, find out what they need, and be a good neighbor. And I'm hoping that in this conversation, it'll be a little different because there are a lot of citizens here. There are a lot of grievances, and the situation isn't minor. I will tell you that I gave you some samples of the houses within one block. of this area. And you can see that there are some significant, beautiful old historic homes with some significant, extremely valuable property. If you do a simple Google search, you'll find that investing in assisted living facilities is a new fad. It's something that a lot of people around the country are doing because it can be extremely lucrative, it can be profitable. Don't take my word for it. Simply pull out your phone and Google it. I tried to get some facts, but so many investment opportunities came up when I was researching. It was impossible to overlook that. Hey, I need to invest in this also. I mean, great. One resident can return $54,000 a year in profits. But it's such an issue that the American Association of Real Estate did a research paper on this, and they found that except for dilapidated neighborhoods, putting assisted living facilities into neighborhoods has a negative effect on the real estate and the market and causes discounted prices. That's just a fact. It's not statistics. It's something you can look up. I did it myself. One of the things I want you to take into consideration when looking at this is the effects that it's going to have on citizens. We have no problems with elderly people in the neighborhood. Many of our residents are elderly. I bought my home 10 years ago, and I got a job in Columbus, and I could have lived anywhere. And the reason I chose Newark is for my house alone. They have beautiful properties, and all I want to do is protect it and protect my families. If I was running this project as a project manager, the first thing I would do is obtain a government variance, which they're trying to do now. The second thing I would do is I'd grab a provisional license for an assisted living facility. And once I had those two, then all I had to do was tear down the house. It's a lot cheaper to build from the ground up for a medical location than it is to rehab a 1920s home up to code. And then I would build a facility by pulling a permit because I no longer needed permission to do it. I'd build a 6,000 square foot facility and maximize my profits. Simple as that. I hope you'll take a look at the fact and take a look at the neighborhood and keep it historic. Thanks for your time.
Ma'am?
Hi, I'm Patty Jurgens. I live at 192 North Street. And that is just on the other side of 11th from where my friend Bev lives. And we have people that are in those homes there that enjoy the neighborhood. But we also have a lot of traffic down on 11th Street. And we don't want to have more traffic than on Merchant Street. We want to make sure that we speak for everybody that's there and understand that we want to keep it a neighborhood for communities and not a business. We did, if we let them start a business, what's to stop everybody else from having a business there? And then the traffic in the neighborhood gets even worse. And I work with the elderly, and if they're going to be in that area, there's going to be times when the ambulance is going to have to come and get them for one reason or another. And then that creates even more traffic in the area. And then what about the workers that are going to come and take care of them in that home? They're also going to clog up the community and make it seem more like less of a neighborhood and more of a business street. And I agree with the gentleman that was here before us. There are certain places to be where we can start this kind of a home and make a better profit if you're starting from scratch than trying to redo a whole another home. And we want to make sure that our wishes are known And that we respect the fact that they're trying to do something nice. But they're not trying to do something in the right area. We love the elderly people. And we would welcome to have people being taken care of in their homes. But to start a business, that's not what we're looking for. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Is there anybody else who would like to speak?
Hi, I'm Kathy Jordan. I live at 370 Merchant Street. My husband Mike and I, we own 2 properties on Merchant Street. When we were at the planning commission meeting, we also discussed the same as many of our residents have said. We are a community, our neighborhood, we are a tight-knit community. We look out for our other family or our other neighbors and help each other out. It's fine that he wants to take care of his parents or elderly people. That's great. That's very nice. But it is not a place for a business in our neighborhood. It's a neighborhood. It's not a place for a nursing home. Mr. Vale had mentioned at the previous meeting that he wanted to have this facility as a nursing home so that he could generate funds to pay to upkeep the property, to provide maintenance, to provide what is needed to turn it into a nursing home. It's an older home. We all know our homes are older homes, and we understand that it does take a little extra cash to pay for repairs. Things that need repaired are not new things, so we have to find other ways to fix it. So we understand that when we bought our home. If he did not want to have to pay for those repairs, perhaps he should have bought a home in another neighborhood. It is not a place for a business. Mr. Vale never mentioned anything at the previous meeting that he was concerned about any type of discrimination for older adults. There is no discrimination in our neighborhood for older adults. We have many older adults in our neighborhood and we love them. They're our neighbors. So we're not, a nursing home in our neighborhood is not the appropriate place. If he wants to do it somewhere else, that's great, not in our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Wait a minute, wait.
They both stop.
No, you do. I'm sorry.
It's such a community.
Sorry, that wasn't very good. Not a very good traffic record.
Good evening, I'm David Ruff. I live at 300 Merchant Street and I bought the house there about 4 years ago. Through my work, I've been to planning commission, city council commissions for the last 18 years in Michigan and Ohio. I don't think I've ever once heard someone basically threaten a planning commission, if you don't support my variance, I'm going to pursue other means. And to me, it's like a last grasp. The neighborhood has come out in strength against this. I don't support it. I don't want it there. When we do have a nice neighborhood. So I strongly oppose this.
Thank you. Yeah. You look like the lady was up here before.
Beverly King, 285 Merchant, and I wanted to say what he just said. I'm mad. I feel like we're being threatened, and I don't like that. I am one of the older senior citizens on the street, and I'm not prejudiced against older people. I am an old person. And I just, I don't like to be threatened, and that really scares me, that he would do that. We don't want you in our neighborhood.
Nope, ma'am.
Okay.
This way, not that way. Anyone else like to speak for or against before I close this public hearing?
Brandon Clayton, I'm at 190 North 11th Street, so I live kind of diagonal from where this property is located, and I'm probably safe to say one of the younger homeowners in the area. I plan to stay there a long time. Like the other gentleman mentioned, I do work in downtown Columbus, so I don't have to live in Newark, but I choose to. And I plan on staying a long time. And my concern is, what if this project happens and then this home is sold? What else is going to come in here to replace it, you know, whether that's other housing or something else of that nature once the zoning would be changed, which is obviously not what I would want to see either. So that's my bigger concern is that this can of worms is opened. What else could come here later down the road that we wouldn't want and be unable to stop it. So, thank you.
Thank you. Somebody else had their hand up, ma'am. Anybody else while she's making her way up? This is your chance. We're gonna, after we close this public hearing, we're going to read it again. We'll have council discussion and then vote. So, ma'am.
I'm Jessica Reynolds. I live at 345 Granville Street. So we live on the corner of 13th Street and Granville Street. We're the street north of Merchant Street. Along 13th Street are several homes. Almost a third of them have been converted into two-family homes. I've been checking with the zoning commission to see if they're legit or not, and they're checking into that to let us know, because I think some of the conversions were not approved. But I'd like to say that we have a lot of problems with those properties. You know, they've been chopped up. They're little apartments. They get low rents. We've had animal abuse problems, drug problems, sex offender problems, and even stabbing on the house that's on the corner of Granville and 13th Street. That house is a single family home that was chopped into 4 apartments. My husband and I have lived here for 20 years, and we've been renovating the house on the corner of 13th and Granville that entire time. We've put in easily a couple $100,000 in trying to maintain the historic value of that home. We bought the home, what we thought was going to be single family area. It's zoned for single family. All the homes in that area except for one, there's a duplex down on Merchant that was built to be a duplex. Why it was approved, I have no idea. None of these homes should have been chopped up at all. We went for refinancing with Huntington a couple of years ago, and we were denied refinancing because of that street, because they had pulled our property values down so much. It's not fair to people who have moved into the area and have put this kind of money into renovating, trying to do the right thing for the community and keep the historical accuracy of the property. There are areas that are zoned for multifamily. There are areas that are zoned for 2-family. He could easily have purchased a property in one of those areas and converted it to his needs. He doesn't need to move into a single family and just start and continue this landslide of problems that we're experiencing from other properties that have been, renovated and transformed. And they don't look good. They don't, the outside doesn't look good. I'm sure there's no architect involved in any of these transformations. It was just all investors on the fly trying to renovate to make 2-family homes. So we are extremely opposed to this. And I mean, and another problem is there's a couple other homes that are going to come up for sale in the area, and they're large homes. If you allow this to go through, my gosh, I can't imagine what can go into the historic homes that are much larger. I mean, if you start one, how can you deny somebody else from chopping up those other big homes? So please, I'm, really requesting that you vote no on this. And I too, I don't appreciate the threat of bringing in a DOJ or whatnot. That's just above me. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else for or against? One more time. Anybody else for or against? Okay, we're going to go ahead and close this public hearing. Janine, would you read 2255 for the second time?
Ordinance number 2255 by Mr. Rath, Mr. Barker, Ms. Blind, Mr. Marmy, and Mr. Harris. An ordinance changing the zoning classification of certain real property generally described as 293 Merchant Street, parcel number 054-250-128-00.000, City of Newark, Lincoln County, Ohio, from that of single-family residence RM medium density district to TFR 2-family residence district zoning code of the City of Newark, Ohio.
A vote yes will change the zoning. A vote no leaves it the same. You've heard the second reading of 22-55. What is your wish?
Mr. President,
Mr. Rath.
make a motion to adopt 22-55.
Motion by Mr. Rath,
Second.
second by Mr. Marmy.
Mr. President.
During discussion on 22-55, Mr. Barker, then Mr. Marmy.
Thank you, Mr. President.
I'm sorry. We'll get you there in a second.
Thank you.
Mr. Barker.
Thank you, Mr. President. Back on February 14th, I spoke against this at the Planning Commission with many of you in the room already here. And I urge my fellow council members tonight to vote no on this ordinance. As many have said tonight, this is a case of spot zoning. This is not what this neighborhood wants. I don't believe there's any discrimination on our behalf. And I'd like to ask the law director to speak to that if we could. Or allow her to speak on this.
Okay, we'll wait. Could we wait till the discussion?
Yes, yes, Mr. President. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. Mr. Marmy.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll speak on the discrimination. We don't have a zoning classification for elderly homes, so therefore we can't discriminate if we're not voting on an elderly home. Just like we don't have any kind of zoning for any other race, color, creed, or anything along those lines. I will say that I always, when faced with a decision on changing a zoning classification, I consider property owner rights, and also I consider those that are around, and I look at what is it that is around and is it contiguous. Two-family housing is not in this, it is not what this neighborhood is made up of. And what it's doing is it's creating it would be a downward spiral if it continued on. We've seen that in various parts of our city, in particular on Hudson Avenue, Mount Vernon Road, and other areas that have larger homes. And once it goes to two-family, then it goes to three-family, four-family, and it just continues and spirals down. It's hard enough to upkeep these older homes and to maintain their historic value. You put it into a situation, it's going to create just an area that would not be conducive to what the neighborhood currently is. And I think that this neighborhood deserves to maintain its integrity the way that it stands, the historic value, single family housing where the residents are proud and they upkeep the homes and don't let them deteriorate and turn into just four family homes is what has happened in different areas in our community. This is an area that we do not want to deteriorate. It does not fit into the current zoning, and therefore I am going to be opposed to the zoning change because it doesn't comply with the neighborhood as it stands. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marmy. Mr. Rath.
Thank you. A few things that I want to bring up. Obviously, there is absolutely no discrimination here whatsoever. We're not basing our decision on what the future use of that house is. The biggest objection that I have on this is spot zoning. The gentleman over here that spoke near the end, sorry, I didn't get your name, but you hit the nail on the head. If that home is changed to this zoning, then the house next door on either side of that could come here and ask for a rezoning, and we would be on no ground whatsoever to deny them. They could come back to sue us, they would absolutely win. So that's why we don't do spot zoning. The other thing that I always take into consideration when talking about a zoning change is future use and what you want to use this property for today. Very admirable, I understand that, but you're not going to be around forever. And the next person that owns that property would do a lot of other things other than what you're talking about. And that is not protecting that neighborhood. So the spot zoning is the biggest thing. The overwhelming opposition from those in the neighborhood that have invested in that neighborhood that plays heavily into it. The planning commission and their opposition to this. With all of that taken into consideration, I am going to vote no on this, and I strongly urge the rest of my council members to also vote no.
Thank you, Mr. Rath. Ms. Blind.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Yes, I am going to urge everyone else to vote no on this. And when I first heard about two-family residents, I was aware of other ones in the area, and I hadn't heard the full narrative until later. The narrative is really important. The who, what, when, where, why, and how. If you can get that established, this is a lesson for everyone as times are changing in this county. we have to have a narrative established. But as people are coming in and they want to make these changes, you guys have done your homework, you've done your due diligence, and that's very respectful. And more so, like my colleagues have said, it's what impacts the community generations after. And it's very important. I want to thank you guys for being not only vigilant, but vocal. And that's really important. Coming to zoning is one of the most important things you can do, more so than coming here. So thank you for your time. Thank you.
Ms. Hollier.
Thank you, Mr. President. Merchant Street is probably my favorite street in the city of Newark. My husband and I take drives down Merchant Street and admire the properties, even get ideas for landscaping. We always thought we would love to own a house there. It's just a wonderful neighborhood, and I commend you for keeping it that way and for gathering together and expressing your opinions about how you want your neighborhood to continue to be. For many reasons, I'm going to vote no on this, but I try to put myself in your situation. If I live there, how would I feel about that? Not just me being up here as kind of an outsider, not living on your street. And I would feel the exact same way you did. Very admirable to want to take care of the elderly. I do appreciate that because I think that's something that our country actually doesn't do a very good job of. But I don't believe it is the right location. And so for that reason, I'll be voting no.
Thank you, Ms. Hollier. Mr. Booth.
Thank you, Mr. President. Merchant Street is actually in my ward. I've heard from a few of you, and Merchant Street is a beautiful residential neighborhood, and it deserves to stay that way. So I would urge my fellow council members as well to go along with the planning commission's recommendation and vote against this rezoning.
Thank you, Mr. Booth. Anybody else? Mr. Barker, you want to ask the law director your question?
I didn't know if the law director would like to weigh in on any of this. I know we talked about this at length. Discussing age as not a discriminatory class. So if you can confirm that, Madam Law Director, that age is not a protected class.
Under the Fair Housing Act, there are 7 categories that fit under protected classes. Age is not one of them. And if you're trying to fit age under a disability, I have a 75-year-old father who plays baseball he would be in for a fight if you told him he was disabled. But you know, it's simply not a protected class under the Fair Housing Act at this time. And federal courts have also upheld that cities that set zoning regulations to achieve its zoning goals and preserve the character of the neighborhood are legitimate and non-discriminatory.
Thank you. Okay, you've heard the discussion. We've had the public hearing opened and closed. The planning commission has recommended not approving this, so we'll take 7 votes to override that. Janine, please call the roll vote.
Mr. Hauser,
No.
Mr. Labutus.
No.
Mr. Lang,
No.
Mr. Marmy.
No.
Mr. Rath,
No.
Mr. Ryan, Mr. Barker,
No.
Ms. Blind,
No.
Mr. Harris.
No.
Ms. Hollier.
No.
That 22-55 fails 9-0. That's all you're here for. If you don't want to stay, I'll give you a second to go, or you're welcome to stay.
Thank you, guys.
Again, there's other sections for citizen comments if you want to stick around, or if you don't, that's okay. I'll give you. Okay. Okay, next we have public hearing 22-57. Denise, we're gonna, you read that and we'll open the public hearing.
Ordinance number 22-57 by Mr. Rath, Mr. Barker, Ms. Blind, Mr. Marmy, Ms. Hollier, and Mr. Harris. An ordinance changing the zoning classification of certain real property generally described as 1401 Mount Vernon Road, parcel tax ID number 054-269934.00.003, City of Newark, Licking County, Ohio, from that of GC General Commercial Zoning District to LI Limited Industrial District Zoning Code of the City of Newark, Ohio.
We're going to open this public hearing on 22-57. The planning commission has recommended approval for this. Is there anyone like to speak for or against during this public hearing? Go ahead. Ms. Platt.
My name is Rick Platt. I'm representing the Port Authority. My address is 880 West Locust Street in Newark, where I reside. This is property that was former Chevron dealership. This actually depicts how we would redo the property in the future, should the rezoning be approved. Our intent is that to not do, we know what we're not going to do now is the things that were there before. Currently, it's been vacant for a while. We intend to not have a car garage, not to sell cars, not to do retail. We don't want to do a lot of things also that are possible in the general commercial zone. What we do want to do is what we call STEM flex. The flex part is to use the two existing buildings in both 1401 and 1425 for flex space. So that front would be office, the back would be production space, and the STEM part is what the Port Authority does. Totally focus on STEM jobs, which are higher paying and have a opportunity for the community. So that's our intent with the properties. We don't know for sure what we're going to do with it. We don't have a tenant at this point. But with the rezoning and are moving forward with repairing the grounds and then also repairing the buildings of the future steps we'll take if the zoning is approved.
Thank you. And I understand you say you're currently going to leave the two buildings.
We're going to leave the two buildings that are in the parcels that are, I guess if my remarks could extend to the second public hearing, I'd like that as well, because it does concern both buildings. And
Well, you can go ahead and talk about it, but we're going to have the other public hearing anyway. Okay. Anybody else like to speak for or against? Once again, for or against? Okay, we're going to go ahead and close the public hearing. Janine, if you'll read 2257 for a second time.
Ordinance number 2257 by Mr. Rath, Mr. Barker, Ms. Blind, Mr. Marmy, Mr. Harris, and Ms. Hattinger. An ordinance changing the zoning classification of certain real property generally described as 1401 Mount Vernon Road. Parcel tax ID number 054-269934-00.003. City of Newark, Licking County, Ohio, from that of GC General Commercial Zoning District to LI Limited Industrial District zoning code of the City of Newark, Ohio.
First, second reading of 22-57. What is your wish?
Mr. President,
Mr. Rath.
we can make a motion to adopt 22-57.
Motion by Mr. Rath, second by Mr. Barker. Is there any discussion on 22-57?
Mr. President.
Mr. Rath.
Thank you, sir. See zero opposition to this, knowing that the planning commission has approved this and is favorable towards it. I would urge everybody to support.
Thank you, Mr. Rath. Any other discussion? Seeing none, Janine, please call the roll vote.
Mr. Hauser?
Yes.
Mr. Labutus?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Mr. Marmy?
Yes.
Mr. Rath?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan? Mr. Barker?
Yes.
Ms. Blind?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Ms. Hattinger?
Yes.
22-57 passes 9-0. Okay. Finally, we have one more public hearing, 22-58. Did I close the last public hearing? Yeah, sure. You did. What's closed? Go ahead.
Ordinance number 22-58 by Mr. Rath, Mr. Barker, Ms. Blind, Mr. Marmy, Mr. Harris, and Ms. Hattinger. An ordinance changing the zoning classification of certain real property generally described as 1425 Mountain Vernon Road. Parcel tax ID number 054-26993-4-00.002. City of Newark, Licking County, Ohio, from that of GC General Commercial Zoning District to LI Limited Industrial District zoning code of the City of Newark, Ohio.
Okay, we're going to open this public hearing. Anyone like to speak for or against?
I'll leave my prop this time at flat 80 West Locust Street. Again, extend my remarks from the previous public hearing. This building 1425 is the larger of the two buildings. And also again lends itself to STEM flex concept of flex space, but with that STEM concentration. If you're accepting the planning commission recommendation that passes.
Thank you, Mr. Platt. Anyone else like to speak for or against? Anyone for or against? Okay, we're going to close this public hearing. If you read 22-58.
Ordinance number 22-58 by Mr. Rath, Mr. Barker, Ms. Blind, Mr. Marmy, Mr. Harris, and Ms. Hattinger. An ordinance changing the zoning classification of certain real property generally described as 1425 Mount Vernon Road. Parcel tax ID number 054-26993-4-00.002. City of Newark, Licking County, Ohio, from that of GC General Commercial Zoning District to LI Limited Industrial District zoning code of the City of Newark, Ohio.
The planning commission has also approved this as before. You heard the second reading of 22-58. What is your wish?
Mr. President,
Mr. Rath.
make a motion to adopt 22-58.
Motion to adopt by Mr. Rath. Second by Mr. Barker. Is there any discussion on 22-58?
Mr.
Mr.
President.
Rath.
Yeah, for the reasons stated on the previous public hearing,
vote for this, and I encourage everybody else to do the same.
Thank you, Mr. Rath, Ms. Sawyer.
Are we allowed to ask Mr. Platt a question or not?
I suppose, not really, but go ahead.
Just a quick question. What's the time frame on when the property would be ready for a new tenant to come in?
We're operating in a phase of protecting the asset right now. There was one of the buildings had theft to the electric, so we're trying to get that restored. The next step is the grounds are in worse shape than they look, so we're going to be kind of ripping out some asphalt, putting down some grass, doing some things with the grounds. The city will be seeing plans for the building hopefully very soon. So I was optimistic we'd be underway sooner than we are, but by third quarter, I expect that we'll be able to fully market the property for having occupants.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Mormon.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is in my ward, and I'm just so happy that this is happening. It's been a property maintenance kind of nightmare and complaints from citizens, and also, I've had to drive past it, and I just like that something positive is coming of this property, and that it's going to be something that not only is going to be appealing to the area, but also productive as far as revenue to the city, as far as jobs and things like that. So I want to thank you, and I'll be in support of this one as well.
Thank you, Mr. Marmy.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to echo what Mr. Marmy said, driven by that building many times, wondering needs to be utilized for something useful. And I just want to thank you for all your effort.
Thank you, Mr. Alger. Anyone else? Jenny, we're going to close this public hearing. I did, and Jenny, so I will close it twice. Jenny, please call the roll vote.
Mr. Hauser,
Yes.
Mr. Labutus.
Yes.
Mr. Lang.
Yes.
Mr. Marmy.
Yes.
Mr. Rath.
Yes.
Mr. Ryan, Mr. Parker.
Yes.
Ms. Blind.
Yes.
Mr. Harris.
Yes.
Ms. Hattiger.
Yes.
That passes 9-0. So motion to adjourn. Next on the agenda, we have comments from citizens. Again, this is not a question and answer period with council. This is just your time to be heard. If we have anyone that would like to speak this first section, again, there's another section after the legislation. Anyone this first section? Okay, we'll move on to ordinances on the second reading, 23-02.
Ordinance number 23-02 by Mr. Rath, Mr. Marmy, Mr. Parker, Mr. Harris, Ms. Blind, and Mr. Labutus. An ordinance enacting amendments to Newark sewer use and sewer charges ordinance 91-59, directing limited publication of the sewer use and sewer charges ordinance.
You've heard the second reading of 23-02. What is your wish?
Mr. President,
Mr. Rath.
make a motion to adopt 23-02.
Motion by Mr. Rath,
Second.
second by Mr. Barker. Is there any discussion on 23-02? Seeing none, Janine, please call the roll to vote.
Mr. Hauser.
Yes.
Mr. Labutus.
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Lang. Mr. Marmy.
Yes.
Mr. Rath.
Yes.
Mr. Ryan, Mr. Parker.
Yes.
Ms. Blind.
Yes.
Mr. Harris.
Yes.
Ms. Hattiger.
Yes.
23-02 passes 9-0. Please on the vote over there, Mr. Lang. Next, we have ordinances on the first reading, 23-03.
Ordinance number 23-03 by Mr. Marmy, Mr. Barker, Ms. Hattiger, and Mr. Rath. To provide for the issuance of not to exceed $1,150,000 of bond anticipation notes in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purpose of paying the cost of Church Street area improvements and repair, including electrical, sidewalk, street, and streetscape, and all necessary appurtenances thereto, and declaring an emergency.
23-03 is on its first reading, but it is an emergency. So what is your wish?
Mr. President,
Mr. Marmy.
make a motion to adopt ordinance 23-03.
Motion to adopt by Mr. Marmy, second by Mr. Labutus. Any discussion on 23-03? Seeing none, Janine, please call the roll to vote.
Mr. Hauser.
Yes.
Mr. Labutus.
Yes.
Mr. Lang.
Yes.
Mr. Marmy.
Yes.
Mr. Rath.
Yes.
Mr. Ryan, Mr. Parker.
Yeah.
Ms. Blind.
Yes.
Mr. Harris.
Yes.
Ms. Hattiger.
Yes.
23-03 passes 9-0. It's continuing to be a long night. Next, we have 23-04.
Ordinance number 23-04 by Mr. Marmy, Mr. Parker, Mr. Rath, and Ms. Hattiger to provide for the issuance of $460,000 of bond anticipation notes in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purpose of paying a portion of the city's cost for Horns Hill Road sanitary sewer project improvements and declaring an emergency.
Again, 23-04 is on its first reading, but it is an emergency. What is your wish?
Mr. President,
Mr. Marmy.
make a motion to adopt ordinance 23-04.
Motion to adopt by Mr. Marmy, second by Mr. Lang. Is there any discussion on 23-04? Seeing none, Janine, please call the roll to vote.
Mr. Hauser?
Yes.
Mr. Labutus?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Mr. Marmy?
Yes.
Mr. Rath?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan? Mr. Barker?
Yes.
Ms. Blind?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Ms. Hattie?
Yes.
23-04 passes 9-0. Next on the first reading, we have 23-05.
Ordinance number 23-05 by Mr. Marmy, Mr. Barker, Ms. Hattinger, Mr. Rath, to provide for the issuance of $510,000 of bond anticipation notes in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purpose of paying the cost of construction of the stream bank protection project, including replacement of the sheet pile dam on Raccoon Creek, site preparation and all necessary appurtenances, and declaring an emergency.
Again, 23-05, it's on its first reading, but it is an emergency. What is your wish?
Mr. President,
Mr. Marmy.
make a motion to adopt ordinance 23-05.
Motion by Mr. Marmy.
Second.
Second by Mr. Lang. Is there any discussion on 23-05? Seeing none, Janine, please call the roll vote.
Mr. Hauser?
Yes.
Mr. Labutus?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Mr. Marmy?
Yes.
Mr. Rath?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan? Mr. Barker?
Yes.
Ms. Blind?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Ms. Hattinger?
Yes.
23-05 passes 9-0. Finally, on the first reading, we have 23-06.
Ordinance number 23-06 by Mr. Marmy, Mr. Barker, Ms. Hattinger, Mr. Rath, an ordinance consolidating 3 bond anticipation note issues of the city of Newark, Ohio, and declaring an emergency.
23-06 is on its first reading, but is an emergency. What is your wish?
Mr. President,
Mr. Marmy.
make a motion to adopt ordinance 23-06.
Motion by Mr. Marmy, second by Mr. Lang. Is there any discussion on 23-06? Seeing none, Janine, please call the roll vote.
Mr. Hauser?
Yes.
Mr. Labutus?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Mr. Marmy?
Yes.
Mr. Rath?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan? Mr. Barker?
Yes.
Ms. Blind?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Ms. Hattinger?
Yes.
23-06 passes 9-0. Now we'll go to resolutions on the second reading, 23-12.
Resolution number 23-12 by Mr. Rath, Mr. Marmy, Mr. Barker, Ms. Blind, and Mr. Labutus. Resolution authorizing and directing the Director of Public Service of the City of Newark, Ohio, to advertise for bids and enter into a contract for remittance of funds for leasing city-owned property to others to use for agricultural purposes.
Well said. You've heard the second reading of 23-12. What is your wish?
Mr. President,
Mr. Rath.
make a motion to adopt 23-2012.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Rath, second by Mr. Barker. Is there any discussion on 23-12? Seeing none, Janine, please call the roll vote.
Mr. Hauser?
Yes.
Mr. Labutus?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Mr. Marmy?
Yes.
Mr. Rath?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan? Mr. Barker?
Yes.
Ms. Blind?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Ms. Hattinger?
Yes.
23-12 passes 9-0. And next on the second reading, we have 23-14.
Resolution number 23-14 by Mr. Marmy, Mr. Barker, Mr. Labutus, Ms. Blind, Mr. Rath, Ms. Hattinger, a resolution appropriating monies for current expenses of the municipal corporation.
You've heard the second reading of 23-14. What is your wish?
Mr. President,
Mr. Marmy.
make a motion to adopt resolution 23-14.
Motion to adopt by Mr. Marmy, second by Mr. Hauser. Is there any discussion on 23-14? Seeing none, Janine, please call the roll vote.
Mr. Hauser?
Yes.
Mr. Labutus?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Mr. Marmy?
Yes.
Mr. Rath?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan? Mr. Barker?
Yes.
Ms. Blind?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Ms. Hattinger?
Yes.
23-14 passes 9-0. Finally, we move on to resolutions on the first reading, 23-16.
Resolution number 23-16 expedite by Mr. Marmy, Mr. Barker, Ms. Hattinger, Mr. Rath, a resolution appropriating monies for current expenses of the municipal corporation.
23-16, Mr. Marmy.
Thank you, Mr. President. Make a motion to waive the 2-day reading rule on resolution 23-16.
Motion to waive the 2-day reading rule by Mr. Marmy, second by Mr. Lang. Mr. Marmy.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have some items that need to be expedited. Some of them are bills that are due, others are ones that we need to meet deadlines. So therefore, I urge council to waive the 2-day reading rule and expedite this.
Thank you, Mr. Marmy. Janine, please call the roll, waive the 2-day reading rule.
Mr. Hauser?
Yes.
Mr. Labutus?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Mr. Marmy?
Yes.
Mr. Rath?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan? Mr. Barker?
Yes.
Ms. Blind?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Ms. Hattinger?
Yes.
2-day reading rule is waived. Mr. Marmy.
Thank you, Mr. President. Make a motion to adopt resolution 23-16.
Motion to adopt by Mr. Marmy,
Second.
second by Mr. Lang. Any other discussion on 23-16? Seeing none, Janine, please call the roll vote.
Mr. Hauser?
Yes.
Mr. Labutus?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Mr. Marmy?
Yes.
Mr. Rath?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan? Mr. Barker?
Yes.
Ms. Blind?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Ms. Hattinger?
Yes.
23-16 passes 9-0. Next on the first reading, we have 23-17.
Resolution number 23-17 by Mr. Marmy, Mr. Barker, Mr. Rath, a resolution appropriating monies for current expenses of the municipal corporation.
23-17 will be held in our next meeting on March 20th. Next on the first reading, we have 23-18.
Resolution number 23-18 by Mr. Rath, Mr. Marmy, Mr. Barker, a resolution authorizing and directing the Director of Public Service for the City of Newark, Ohio to enter into a lease agreement with Park National Bank for lease purchase of one medic unit for the Division of Fire.
23-18 will be held for 2 weeks until our next meeting on March 20th. Next on the first reading, we have 23-19.
Resolution number 23-19 by Mr. Rath, Mr. Marmy, and Mr. Barker, a resolution authorizing and directing the Director of Public Service for the City of Newark, Ohio to enter into a lease purchase agreement with the Park National Bank for the purchase of 2 snowplows.
23-19 will be held at our next meeting on March 20th. And next we have 23-20.
Resolution number 23-20 by Mr. Rath, Mr. Marmy, Mr. Barker, Ms. Hattiger, a resolution authorizing and directing the Director of Public Service to enter into an amended agreement with the Newark Development Partners as its agency and instrumentality for commercial development in the city of Newark.
And 23-20 will be held for 2 weeks until March 20th to our next meeting. And finally, 23-21.
Resolution number 23-21 by Mr. Rath, Mr. Marmy, Mr. Barker, and Ms. Hattiger, a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute necessary paperwork to have the city of Newark, Ohio join the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission.
And 23-21 will be held for 2 weeks until March 20th for our next meeting. And that concludes our legislative this evening. Thanks for your attention. Now we're going to look at that. Okay, next we have our second opportunity for comments from citizens. Again, this is not a debate with council or this is your chance to be heard. So if anyone like to speak this second opportunity, just raise your hand. I'll call you up and anyone? Okay, any city officials this evening? Law Director Moore,
I'll pass, thank you.
Mayor Hall.
I'd like to welcome our two newest Newark police officers, Nicholas Fischio and Kevin Distelhorst. Were sworn in this morning, and I know the chief is here, and they're two high caliber men. One is a new profession for him, another one is one of our lateral hires we've talked about down across, but both spoke briefly this morning. We're very excited to join Newark and be a part of this community, and there'll be more to come. Thanks. So both on police and fire side. It's always a great day when we swear in new officers. That'll pass.
That's great. Thanks, Mayor. So these two are not the new guys.
Good testimony.
Mr. Allen.
Thank you, Mr. President. First off, I would like to thank all people who came out here to speak with regards to that potential zoning change on Merchant Street. I think it's disappointing that discrimination was used as one of the reasons to push that through, and there's really not the case for that. I also want to wish Mr. Ryan's condolences for the passing of his grandfather. Yes. He has
He just said.
never mind.
Very
I could really go there on that with all of that.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to thank everyone for their help in not passing 22-55. As I said, Merchant Street is a great residential neighborhood in the fourth ward, and it's needed to be so. And I'm glad that did not pass. Now I will pass.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Mr. Lang.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would have.
Thank you, Mr. Lang. Mr. Marmy.
Thank you, Mr. President. Need to call a finance committee meeting for March the 20th. Also, I would urge everyone to keep Mr. Ryan in your prayers because his grandfather is very, very ill. And so he's at his bedside this evening. And then finally, I just want to wish Newark High School basketball team good fortune. They are really playing well. They have one of the best coaches in the state of Ohio. I believe the best coach in the state of Ohio. And they're just exceeding expectations. He gets the best out of all of his players. And I'm just excited for him. I think it's been fantastic watching them through the tournament through the tournaments now. And I wish them good fortune this week. So with that, I pass.
Thank you, Mr. Marmy. Yeah, they're on fire right now. They're doing great. And thank you for saying that about Mr. Ryan. Mr. Rath.
Thank you. First I'll call a service committee meeting for the 20th, March 20th. As I know, you're not the new guys on the block, but you're getting a little excited when we were talking about the senior living. I know you guys were looking forward to being able to live together.
Oh, man.
With that, I'll pass.
Mr. Barker.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would like to thank Luke Wansel for coming in tonight to do the pledge. I know he had to basically run in here from baseball. So Luke, thank you for doing that tonight. I also like to thank Director Rhodes and our street department for making some major pothole repairs this morning. I got some information regarding some residents and some people that actually driven going through town who hit some major potholes that actually blew some tires. So we got those taken care of first thing this morning. And then I also would just like to thank my fellow council members for the support on voting no on the Merchant Street rezoning. I've been talking a lot to those residents. I think we have some future things that we're going to bring regarding Merchant Street here very soon. And with that, I'll pass.
Ms. Blind.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to thank the police department and property maintenance for some interventions again that they've been making in our neighborhoods, and the residents are very grateful, and I am too. And I'd like to thank Mr. Balderson's office and Mr. Urbeck and the locals from Genesee and Wyoming Railways for the great meeting that we had. His first steps and making some really great changes in Newark. And you know, I've often heard that it's not in the fast steps, but it's in the consistent purpose steps that things change. And I'm very excited about that. They want to work together with us and securing Newark and bringing things certainly our optics into I could just help bring up the neighborhoods and work with us. And so I'm very excited about that. And I'd like to thank everyone again who voted down that zoning. Zoning is really important. Again, if you ever have a chance to go to zoning, go. I go every chance I get because I learned something new. And once it happens in zoning, you know, there's a lot of things that are hard to reverse. So please come to zoning. So thank you.
Done?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Blind. Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to congratulate the North boys basketball for winning the district. I agree with Mr. Marmy, Coach Quackenbush is probably the best coach in the state. And also like to congratulate him for being the winningest high school basketball coach in North high school history now. And Trish was talking about her dad playing baseball at 75. He asked me last year if I wanted to play baseball on his baseball team. I said, "You mean softball?" I got a dirty, nasty look. I said softball's for sissies. I said, I guess I'll be a sissy then, because I'm not playing baseball. So with that, I pass.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Ms. Holly.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank Tim Hickman, Director Hickman, for his help with the property maintenance, unique property maintenance issue, I would say, and I appreciate being able to work that out. So thank you. And just want to remind everybody, if you have time on Friday at 11 o'clock, it's the ribbon cutting for the St. Vincent Haven Men's Shelter. It's a really big deal and it'll help us out a lot. And so you are welcome to attend that. Again, 11 o'clock at the Haven. That pass.
Thank you, Ms. Hollier. I guess I'd like to also thank Luke and his dad, Drew, for coming in tonight, doing the pledge. Luke was really nervous and nobody knows that happened, but he got it out, so he did a great job. Well, the meeting's going on long enough. I think our next meeting is March 20th, which will be 5:45 for committees, 7 o'clock for council. And with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Harris, second by Mr. Hauser. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.